From the Tennessee Valley Weather Channel, this is a tropical weather update.
Fred Gossage here in the Tennessee Valley Weather Center on this July 15th, 2025 on this Tuesday with your daily regularly scheduled tropical weather outlook. And no big systems in the Atlantic Basin, but we are still watching the potential for some tropical development in the northern Gulf as we head through the rest of the week. The afternoon update from the National Hurricane Center Office of the National Weather Service continues a 40% chance, a medium risk of a tropical depression or stronger developing over the next 7 days or over the northern Gulf. They also give it a 40% chance of that happening within the next 48 hours as our system that's been off the east coast of Florida crosses the northern Florida peninsula in the next 24 hours and then gets into the far northern Gulf here over the next couple days. Not expecting a big system, regardless of whether it becomes a depression or even Tropical Storm Dexter, or if it just stays a disorganized low pressure with some wind and some rain and some rip currents. It's not expected to be a big system. The primary impacts from it along the Gulf Coast will be heavy rain and the potential for localized flooding, some breezy conditions, and also a high rip current risk as we head through the rest of the week and the weekend. So if you're headed for the beach, if you're headed for the Gulf Coast, make absolute sure you pay attention to the rip current warning flags and obey all official guidelines and things that they put out on the Gulf Coast, because the rip current risk will be high, and paying attention to that could save your life if you're headed to the Gulf Coast later this week. You can see the spin, the low pressure here. This is tropical satellite. The low pressure is moving on shore this afternoon and headed westward. It does have a burst of convection with it, and you also notice that the upper level winds are a little more favorable looking. So as this crosses across the northern Gulf, there is still some potential of this possibly becoming a tropical depression here as it moves westward. Now, as if it hugs the coast like this or just offshore, it's likely not going to have too much of a chance to develop. Maybe a short-lived depression out of it. I think some of our model tracks are initializing a little too far to the north. I think it's going to be a track that's just offshore over the far northern Gulf Coast. The farther south it can track over the north central Gulf, the longer it's out over water and the better potential it will have of becoming a tropical depression or maybe a lower end Tropical Storm Dexter. I'm not expecting a hurricane out of it or anything like that. I expect a lower end system with rain, potential for flooding, and some rip currents being the greater threat here. As we head into the weekend, I do think the tropical moisture plume with the circulation, whether it develops or not, does start to get pulled inland across the southeast, and that will likely increase the rain chances across a large part of the southeast as we head into the weekend. Elsewhere across the western Atlantic Basin, not a whole lot going on. Still a good amount of wind shear here over the Caribbean, and that's been one of the main things keeping anything from developing in the western Atlantic Basin here so far this season, and we expect that to continue at least for a few more weeks, and then it may start to settle down as we head on into August. We're watching that carefully. A little bit of tropical wave activity headed off the west coast of Africa, but nothing has been able to sustain itself for the past 24 to 48 hours, and no signs of tropical development here for at least the next 7 days. But I do think as we get into the first 10 days of August, the global circulation pattern starts to get a little more favorable, but we expect a natural uptick in tropical activity as we head out of July into August anyway. So we'll watch the Gulf system very carefully, not expecting a big system out of it, not expecting a hurricane out of it. We may not even get Tropical Storm Dexter out of it, but we can't rule out that possibility. Main impacts on the Gulf Coast will be high rip current risk the rest of the week and the weekend, and the potential for some locally heavy rain and flooding. Elsewhere, no tropical development for the Atlantic Basin for at least the next 7 days. But as always, we'll watch it carefully for you.